Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin in the Yukon, where the Hospital Corporation and the territorial government say the door is open if health unions want to come back to the table. This week, unions representing health workers walked away from a steering committee looking at the crisis in health and human resources. Cheryl Kawaja brings us more on what's driving the two sides apart.
There are things that the government, the hospital corporation, and the unions do agree on. There's a desperate need for more workers, there's an aging population, and there's demand for increased quality care.
This is a system effort overall. And so it's really important that we believe that we have everybody at the table tackling this health human resource crisis.
According to the government and Hospital Corp, the idea with the Health Human Resources Steering Committee is to bring together people from across the health sector to find solutions. That includes groups like the Medical and Nurses Associations, the hospitals, the university, the government, and unions. The committee says its priorities include retention strategies, supporting international licensing, improving data collection, and education programs to help fill jobs. But the unions say it's not relevant to its members.
What we understood it and what it is turning out to be appear to be two different things.
He says the focus is heavily on recruitment and the future, and that there's little space to discuss the day-to-day issues, like factors around retention, like safety, burnout, and salary.
What we're often told is this isn't the right table to have that conversation, or you're not bringing this forward in the appropriate manner. That's not helpful to this situation.
The Hospital Corp and the government say they're disappointed the unions walked out, and the door is still open, but add the work will continue with or without the unions.
The members of the steering committee, which is broadly representative of our healthcare system, are committed to this work. It's too important.
Meanwhile, the Yukon Employees Union says it's willing to work collaboratively if its input is truly welcome. Cheryl Kawaja, CBC News, Whitehorse.
The Quebec College of Physicians released a highly critical report on health services in Nunavik this week. They called for an urgent plan to improve health care in the region. The report noted that Nunavik doesn't have any X-ray machines, intensive care units, CT scan machines, or round-the-clock operating rooms. It added that many patients have to be flown to Montreal for care because there are no full-time medical specialists in the province's far north. Nunavik health officials say they've told the provincial government about their concerns, but little has been done.
The whole bureaucracy of decisions that need to be made takes time, and I'm chasing time here. It's very, very exhausting and very sad, but I'm very glad that this report is just putting light on the reality that I'm facing, that we're facing here.
Munich says there were staff shortages before the COVID pandemic, and they've gotten worse. She adds Nunavik's two hospitals desperately need upgrades and new equipment. As you heard yesterday, some dental patients in the Beaufort Delta region of the NWT are being told to get tested for HIV, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C. That is because dental equipment used at 5 community dental clinics last spring was not properly sanitized. The NWT Office of the Chief Public Health Officer issued the warning yesterday. It says the clinics took place in March and April of this year in the communities of Fort McPherson, Aklavik, Paulatuk, Sax Harbor, and Uluhaktok. It also says the risk from these unsterilized instruments is low and that testing is a precaution. Dr. Pirio Friedman is a dentist in Yellowknife. She also travels around the NWT offering dental clinics, though she was not part of the clinics in question. She says she's not sure how this could have happened.
We bring with us all the materials, the supplies, the equipment is in the dental room already provided, at least in those communities where I go to. In the past, when that was not the case, we actually would bring our own sterilizer. If ever there was a problem, we would get another one by flight. And if that wasn't possible, we would simply have to leave, which hasn't happened. But
Friedman says that sterilizers used by dentists rarely malfunction, but she says it is a possibility. Again, anyone who got dental care between March and April of this year in Fort McPherson, Aklavik, Paulatuk, Sax Harbor, or Uluhaktok is being told to get tested for HIV, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C. A boil water advisory is in place for parts of downtown and lower Iqaluit. The city says it's a precautionary measure due to necessary water infrastructure work. The advisory says it is essential to boil water for things like drinking, washing your food, and brushing your teeth. The city says Iqaluit residents will be notified once the advisory is lifted. Further north in Nunavut, a boil water advisory has been lifted for Pond Inlet. The Nunavut Department of Health put the safety measure in place in mid-September due to chlorine being manually added to the water for maintenance. It's been a week since Indigenous leaders in Fort Chipewyan, Alberta, accused the federal government of covering up contamination at the Transport Canada dock in the community. They say that Transport Canada learned about it in a report in 2017 and never told anyone. Now, the issue has made it to the floor of the House of Commons in Ottawa. Nunavut MP Lori Idlaut asked the newly appointed Minister of Transport about it yesterday.
The Liberals are actively refusing reconciliation and evading their obligations required in the honor of the Crown. This government knew for 7 years that the big dock in Fort Chipewyan is contaminated with cancer-causing substances, and for 7 years they covered it up. Rightfully, families are now worried about their children's health and whether they will lose them to cancer. When will this government uphold the honor of the Crown and work with First Nations to ensure their health and safety?
Hear, hear. The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for raising this important point. Safety is my top priority as Minister of Transport. I hear and understand the concerns from the First Nation communities, and it is crucial that remote Northern and Indigenous communities have access to safe and reliable connectivity that they need. I will be continuing to work with the Minister of Indigenous Services on this very important matter. Thank you.
Anita Anand was only named the Minister of Transport last month. She says there's work currently underway to address the contamination in Fort Chipewyan.
That work involves a health study to ensure and examine the risks, the health risks, and it is community-led. So that study is ongoing. And once the results of that study come back, we will be able to chart the next steps for addressing this very serious issue at the dock and in terms of the surrounding environmental.
Anand says her understanding is that the earlier 2017 report did not reveal severe health risks. The Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation recently commissioned its own study of the dock. It revealed cadmium, arsenic, copper, and other contaminants in the area. Newly obtained documents tell us more about what happened last year when a Northwest Territories firefighter died on the job. Adam Yeadon was struck by a falling tree while working near a fire 27 kilometers from his home of Fort Liard. The Workers' Safety and Compensation Commission said earlier this year it wouldn't lay charges in the incident. And now CBC News has documents explaining why. Leni Lambrink joins us now with more. So Leni, what did those documents tell us about the day that Adam died?
So we already knew from Adam's family that he had been killed by a falling tree. Now we know a bit more about how that happened. The Workers' Safety and Compensation Commission sent a health and safety officer to speak to Adam's crewmates. And what that officer found out was that it had been 2 trees falling in a domino pattern. So first a tree in the burn area fell, but it hit a tree in a green area where the crew had been working. And it was that second tree, a poplar more than 50 feet tall, that hit Adam on the head. He'd been looking down at the time using a chainsaw to chop a tree on the ground.
So why didn't the Workers' Safety and Compensation Commission lay charges in this case?
So what the WSCC found, they found that the circumstances of Adam's death were beyond the control of his crewmates and his employer. They found he had been trained to cut trails and brush where he was working, he was using the right PPE, and he was following procedures. They also found other people working with him had the training they needed and that first aid and communication devices were on site. Now, the investigator did list some basic reasons for what happened, but obviously the WSCC has decided these don't rise to the level of workplace charges. It says there was a failure to identify hazards, an inadequate warning system, and a lack of situational awareness. The WSCC doesn't say, however, who was responsible for addressing those gaps.
So the Northwest Territories government did its own reporting and investigation into what happened here, and that was actually sent to you as part of this report. So what did that say?
So that document lays out the department's perspective on what happened. It has details about where the crew was working, what they were doing, how the incident unfolded, and the aftermath. One thing in ECC's report that struck me, though, was about training. NWT firefighters are taught about dangerous trees as part of their chainsaw training that Adam had. But the year this happened, 2023, that was the first year that an entire one-day course was being offered on the topic. Decho firefighters weren't scheduled to get that one-day training until 2024, though, since their chainsaw training certification wasn't going to lapse yet. ECC's report also has more than a dozen recommendations for its own fire program. One of them is to add more information about dangerous trees into firefighter training.
Thanks for your work on this, Leni.
Thanks for having me.
The Vuntut-Gwitchin government is once again part of the Council of Yukon First Nations. Previously, the First Nation was only an observer and unable to vote. Julian Green has more.
Chief Pauline Frost says citizens at a recent General Assembly were loud and clear. After 16 years, it's time to regain full status at the advocacy organization. In 2008, the First Nation left. Then Chief Joe Linklater accused the organization of not being transparent with its plans. These days, Frost strikes a much different tone. Now, she says, is the time for more collaboration on issues such as climate change, dwindling salmon runs, and Arctic sovereignty.
We're not going to show up as one independent voice. That no longer works for us. Unity and having a voice, a collective voice, is more powerful. It's powerful in that we present one voice of Indigenous Yukoners.
Peter Johnston is the Grand Chief of the Council. He says the move isn't only about ensuring Yukon First Nations have a stronger voice, but jurisdiction.
We need everybody in the room to have these discussions, but particularly at the political level, which includes obviously the government, whether it be federal or territorial, but also the respective chiefs that represent their communities. And my leadership has always been about an open door policy.
Johnston says as the northernmost community in the territory, Vuntut-Gwitchin's political involvement is crucial. Earlier today, the council endorsed the First Nations membership bid. Julian Green, CBC News, Whitehorse.
The NWT government has introduced a new funding program aimed at helping communities in the Sahtu and Beaufort Delta regions. This is to offset some of the costs of flying in products that can't be brought in by barge because of low water levels on the Mackenzie River. Business owners in affected communities are thankful for the support, but they say it's not enough. Luke Carroll has that story.
This one-time contribution funding is specifically tailored to this extraordinary event, a sudden and severe interruption in a critical supply route to a region that has no other supply alternatives.
This money will mean community and Indigenous governments, as well as businesses in the region, can recoup up to 50% of the difference in costs between barging versus flying supplies in. This is up to a maximum of $30,000 per business. Now, if you're a bit confused by the equation businesses need to use to access the subsidy, you're not alone.
Anything helps, but I don't know when they say like 50% of the difference and these types of programs like sound kind of complicated. And now I have to figure out the calculations of what I paid for air freight and versus barge freight, and it also changes your decision making. Like if you're getting something, maybe I'm not going to get that thing because I can't fit in a plane anymore.
Kevin Diebold runs several businesses in Norman Wells. He says because of how costly it is to fly things, the $30,000 limit will be reached quickly. But like Barasa, he's appreciative for any support.
So this government help definitely will help a lot of people. I would like to see the program go, just a one-time thing. I'd like to see it go on next year. And the reason why that is because they're only thinking right now. But if we don't get no barge next year, it's going to be the same thing.
Minister Cleveland did acknowledge this could be a long-term problem, that low water levels could continue to prevent barges from traveling up the Mackenzie. And she said the only real long-term solution to this would be the Mackenzie Valley Highway. Luke Carroll, CBC News, Yellowknife.
The Baker Lake Inuit Child First program has recently moved to a benefits card system for beneficiaries, but it can only be used at the Northern Store, and one competitor is calling for more inclusiveness. Carl Cardinal reports.
It all started on October 1st when the hamlet of Baker Lake announced on Facebook the new Northern Store system for Jordan's beneficiaries. Some users were quick to ask what will happen to the other stores. Richard George, the general manager of the Sanavik Cooperative, said he found out from that post that the Northern Store is moving to a benefits card system, and he will have appreciated to be contacted by the hamlet and giving the same opportunity.
It's all over social media where the hamlet put up a bulletin stating that they were giving Northern the go-ahead to use gift cards, specifically Northern. That's pretty unfair on our part because we do have some members here that have Jordan's principle, not as much as the Northern, but we have some. We service them as well, So if they were going to do that, they should have told both organizations that, okay, we want to change everything to gift card system so that it's a fair game for everybody.
The hamlet is responsible for the administration of the Jordan Principal Funds, valued at over $5 million. Kevin Tajuk, the mayor of Baker Lake, explained that around 80% of the beneficiaries are shopping at the Northern Store, and the switch-off program is to alleviate some of the administrative burden at the municipal level. Asked by CBC if that announcement will make Jordan's principal beneficiaries more inclined to shop at the Northern Store instead of the co-op, Tajuk responded,
I don't feel like there was much of a change. I mean, I haven't seen this month's statistics yet, but there are still the preferred vendors. If they want to go to one store or the other, they can. Month by month, you're allowed to change which vendor you want to go to. That adds, again, another administrative burden on the hamlet, but we're keeping that option open to the community. This isn't something that we're obligated to provide. We've elected to provide this to the community to help the community.
Since the announcement, Richard George says he reached out to the hamlet and the co-op will be moving to the benefits card system starting November 1st. Carl Cardinal, CBC News, Iqaluit.
Rankin Inlet is getting a new community freezer. The building will replace the current structure that dates back to the 1960s. The 2,000 square foot modular building was built in Nova Scotia and is being assembled on site. Rankin's mayor says the Hamlet's Council worked hard to secure funding for this project.
We are planning to open it in the springtime as the weather warms and close it in the fall time and during the winter months. We hope to empty the freezer at that time. I hope the people will use it and make sure it is taken care of. Make sure the meat is stored properly.
Will be closer to the dock and beach area. It's expected to be completed by the end of the month and opened next spring.
He was completely unaccountable.
Prince Andrew never had somebody say the word no.
The Queen adored him more than anybody else.
This whole story is about the abuse of power.
We've got emails, we've got photographs, we've got witnesses.
Wow. Ordinary people turn a small investment into big bucks. I'm in it to win it.
Do you think Mummy and Daddy are going to double their money? That's what I thought.
Why, hello.
You want it? I got it. This is so cool.
Focus, focus, focus.
Here we go. Whoa, imagine how good the TV is gonna look now.
Oh, God!
This is incredible.
Did you know this?
As if.
Could the pressure be any higher?
Every week, the issues that matter to Canadians.
Cost of living hurts everybody.
Connecting politics to people.
Win, win, win.
We are not going back.
Sundays, join me for Rosemary Barton Live.
It makes sense that they get a larger share, or does it?
Welcome to the Greenbelt.
All of this, just single detached homes.
Yes.
What do we know? I think we can explain.
About that with Andrew Chang. Watch free on CBC Gem.
It's got to come from the heart.
I will cry. You're so together.
How much more connected do you want to be?
See you there.
Guess what? Pinch me. Yes!
It's a worst-case scenario for those of us who like to spend time out on the land. Yukoner Paul Burbage was grouse hunting recently when he had a very close encounter with a hungry grizzly bear. Due to some quick thinking, he's able to share his story.
I heard a kind of a huff. I wasn't sure what it was exactly. Thought it might have been the dog. He runs into things from time to time. Then I looked over and I saw a grizzly bear kind of stand up in thick bush about 10 meters away from me. Yeah, and I thought, well, you know, sees me, it's going to take off, but it didn't. It kind of circled a tiny bit. Thought it was going to catch my wind, but it didn't. It just kind of found an opening and just came straight at me and kind of hung up about 4 feet away and was posturing and pounding the ground and was very unhappy to see me. It didn't end, and it actually like came closer to me, and I pushed it away with my gun. I pulled my bear spray out, and I turned, and it was coming at me again. Not like a full charge, but like closing the distance, and then it hung up again, and I was able to spray it, and it took off like that, and I did the same.
As land users, there's so much value in us sharing these experiences so that other people have the opportunity to learn from it. And your story has all the pieces in it, you know, and I'm just so happy you were prepared. You know, when I teach the bear safety course, I'm always telling people these things can happen in 3 seconds. So you need to know where your bear spray is. You have to have it accessible and be able to use it. And fortunately, you're such an experienced guy, you know, you're calm under pressure, you have those skills, but I think it's important for all of us to like avoid complacency. Using bear spray is the best tool for sure, and never be afraid to use it. I mean, it's non-lethal to the bear, extremely effective, and commonly stats in the US say it's more effective than a firearm. And I mean, that's exactly what you encountered, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That was Jim Welsh and Paul Burbage speaking to the CBC's Yukon Morning in Whitehorse. The CBC's Massey Lectures made its first visit to Iqaluit on Tuesday. About 100 people attended the event at Inukshuk High School, and it began, as you can see, with a performance by the Inukshuk drum dancers. Ian Williams is this year's lecturer. His lecture is called What I Mean to Say, Remaking Conversation in Our Time. It's about having a conversation about conversations. He previously spoke on CBC Radio's Q with Tom Power about why he chose conversations as his topic.
We're living in a point now where we can barely talk to each other, right? Like it seems incredibly urgent these days with sort of increasing polarization, sort of online forms of talking. And yeah, it seems like really timely that we kind of step back and say, why can't we talk to each other? How can we talk to each other? What do we need to talk about right now in 2024? And create like an environment and a space to make that happen. So I think it's sort of the fabric to make a number of other kinds of important sort of interventions possible.
A panel discussion in Iqaluit followed, which featured Williams, activist Ayu Peter, filmmaker Simeone Kisa Nickelbein, and the host of CBC Radio's Ideas, Nala Ayad. The Massey lectures will stop in Saskatoon, Victoria, and Toronto later this month. The future of the Iqaluit Slow Pitch League is looking brighter. Lights installed this summer will provide a more flexible schedule for next year's season. Games can now be held later in the evenings. The president of Iqaluit's Slow Pitch League says the lights will also keep players safe when it's dark.
We can base our schedule for slow pitch around the lighting now, so we will know. Be it at nighttime or in the morning, whatever, we can play ball. Doesn't matter what time, 24/7.
Dominic says the lights have gotten a positive reaction from players this season. 6 45-foot poles were installed, each attached to LED lights. Quidlick Energy Corporation donated the 45-foot poles for the project, and installation was done by Canadro. The total cost of the project was around $38,000. It was paid for by the Slow Pitch League. And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
My life is a mess. I'm not giving anybody advice.
Maybe you were subconsciously worried about our little threesome.
Ew. No, I don't mean it in that same way.
You guys can move out and get an apartment together when I'm gone.
Wait, did you mean it?
You're good thieves. Best in town.
Thank you.
It is a small town.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes your world.
All right.
Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now. We are just approaching Gaza.
With local CBC Radio 1 Live to connect us closer to home. It's news you can trust, delivered when you want, where you want. On the CBC News app. Download for free.
Hi, friends. Guess what? Pinch me. Ooh. Mind blown. Yes!
I'm not a delicate lady.
I don't know who needs to hear this.
I had a man do an impression of me recently, and he lowered his voice, so...
What's going on upstairs for them?
I'm sorry.
Nailed it.
Your sister.
She tried to kill herself.
Mom showed me your suicide note.
Thank you for putting me on it. I was like 2/3 down the list. Feels like I was an afterthought. I just didn't want it to go to your head.
every week the issues that matter to Canadians.
Cost of living hurts everybody.
Connecting politics to people.
We are not going back.
Join me for Rosemary Barton Live.